For Professor Wiegel, and it's in relation to the role of PwC, I'm sure it's the same for the other Big Four, in setting and actually helping to establish those laws that you are talking about in relation to tax issues, and ask you about the potential conflicts of interest that could arise. And maybe just to help, I'll give an example from Ireland, where we've had a PwC managing partner who's been involved in advising Google, Apple, Facebook, probably countless more, on how to use Ireland as a centrepiece of their global tax avoidance strategies, including in terms of the setting up of the so-called double Irish. The same leader in PwC is also holding a very highly influential position in the American Chamber of Commerce tax group in Ireland, and in this role PwC successfully ensured the withholding tax that required the Dutch sandwich to be used in conjunction with the double Irish was scrapped. And all the while the same person was separately advising the then Finance Minister on tax policy, a Finance Minister who he happened to be related to. So we know as well the role played by PwC in the LuxLeaks scandal. So there's at least 2 member states where we know within the EU that we can see the PwC has played a major role, not only in facilitating tax avoidance by multinationals, but also in designing the whole tax system itself, even at a governmental level. So the questions I have for you is whether you'd be in a position to outline in detail the relationship between PwC and various EU member states governments. Are there guidelines in place between PwC or within PwC regarding the role in terms of advising governments? And can you outline the impact that you believe this network has had in terms of public policy level in the EU? Because it's all very well saying that we need strong laws in relation to clarification and certainty for companies like yourself, but if companies like yourselves are actually helping behind the scenes to establish those same laws, then surely there's a major conflict of interest that needs to be addressed.
Ja, okay, gut. Ich glaube, Professor Weil hat am Anfang schon zu diesem System etwas gesagt. Bitte, Sie haben das Wort.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the for the question. Clearly, you mentioned names of a number of taxpayers, and I'm not in the position to talk about individual taxpayers. When I responded to the earlier question of the conflicts of interest, I acknowledge that the issue is one that is out there and has to be addressed. I think there is a big distinction between the conflict of interest when Big Four networks advise developing countries with their systems, both in terms of legislation and administration, and the type of dialogue that you just mentioned. I would think that if a senior policymaker in any of the EU member states has a conversation with a representative of a Big Four or of a law firm, it is very, these are very sophisticated countries with very sophisticated officials, and there is, that there is an exchange of thoughts, I would say is perfectly all right. And we have had this discussion, in fact still have this discussion in my country, in the Netherlands as well. And in a way, I hesitate to say this, but in a way sometimes it's even insulting to the civil servants who are responsible for tax policy. The suggestion that is conveyed here is that they would not be independent, or would not, when they talk to an industry representative or a tax advisor, not, take into account that there are diverging interests. Generally, and I mean this genuinely, I think that dialogue is very important and should take place, and the issues that you just referred to, they have to come out in that dialogue as well. And just one remark on the tax planning that's going on. I think that some of the familiar names that you mentioned are US multinationals. If you look at the design of the US tax system currently, there is a constant and enormous incentive for US taxpayers, multinational taxpayers, to defer their tax in respect of non-US income. That's recognized by former administrations, and I believe the current administration as well. And it's recognized that something in terms of tax reform must be done. So I refer to the response to the earlier question. The legislator has an important role to play as well. Thank you.
Just one small point, Chairman, if I can. The companies I mentioned were Google, Apple and Facebook. I think to describe them as taxpayers is being extremely generous. But do you not see a conflict of interest whereby the same people who are advising companies in terms of how to avoid tax are actually advising government in terms of the tax policy and the tax laws that they're implementing? It's a fairly simple question.
Yes, and my fairly simple answer is I'm not privy to the facts that you're stating, so I'm not in the position to respond to those.
Okay, die Frage werden wir weiter behandeln. Als nächster ist Pascal Durand für die Grünen dran. Bitte, Herr Durand.